Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Space News, the weekly show where we dive into the launches that occurred last week, launches slated to occur next week, Starship news, and other interesting space news. We got some more info on SN10's post-landing explosion, and a new date for the hot fire test of NASA's SLS core stage. Today is Saturday, February 20th, and there is a lot to talk about. So let's get started. Here we go with Starship news. Following the successful flight, first ever landing, and explosion of SN10, Elon Musk revealed that the engine thrust was too low during the landing burn because of partial helium ingestion from the fuel header tank. In other words, after SN8's crash landing, which was due to low pressurization in the header tanks, which are the tanks that are used for the landing burn, Elon approved a temporary switch from autogenous pressurization to using helium. If autogenous pressurization would have been used on SN10, the thrust most likely would have been nominal during the landing burn, and the landing therefore would have been successful. Fixes are being implemented on SN11 as we speak, so fingers crossed. Speaking of SN11, complete with all three Raptor engines, rolled down Highway 4 to the launch site on Monday, where it was lifted onto its pad. On Tuesday, it completed its first test, the ambient pressure test, in order to check for leaks. On Thursday, SN11 completed its first cryo-proof test, which is where the team tests SN11's ability to hold super cold fuels by filling the vehicle up with liquid nitrogen. They also tested the vehicle's reaction control system during this test. The first static fire for SN11 can happen as early as today, so make sure you're looking out for that. If somehow all goes perfectly well with the static fire, we're looking great to see another high-altitude flight test by the end of the month. Now over to the launches we saw last week. We saw two launches last week, both of which were yesterday, March 11th. First off, we saw another Starlink mission, Starlink 21, which launched from Slick 40 from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida at 8:13 UTC. Following stage separation, Falcon 9's first stage successfully landed on the Just Read the Instructions drone ship. This mission successfully carried 60 SpaceX Starlink satellites into a low Earth orbit. The other launch we saw yesterday was the first successful flight of a Long March 7A launch vehicle, which launched the Xi'an 9 satellite from the Wenchang Space Launch Center in Hainan Province at 17:51 UTC. Xi'an 9 will be mainly used for in-orbit tests of new technologies, including space environment monitoring. Now on to the launches we hope to see next week. The only launch we expect to see is yet another Starlink mission, Starlink 22, in which a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket will launch the 22nd batch of 60 satellites for SpaceX's Starlink broadband network. While there are no other launches next week, NASA is targeting Thursday, March 18th, for the second hot fire of the core stage of NASA's SLS moon rocket. If successful, this is the final test before the core stage can be shipped to Kennedy Space Center to be integrated to the rest of the rocket in the VAB. This fire is targeted to run for 8 minutes, although a shorter burn is possible if the engineers feel they have enough data. Speaking of the SLS, the twin side solid rocket boosters have been fully stacked in the VAB. And that does it. Thank you all so much for watching. It means so much to me, and I really do thank you. If you enjoyed, I have to ask you to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos are published to ensure that the news is as up to date as possible. Comment down below if there is anything important I missed, and thank you again so much. Goodbye!